If you haven't read the book Raising Men by Eric Davis, I highly recommend it. Today, we're going to take from some of his main points to talk about 4 key components that he recommends that you use when creating consequences for your children. Hey, welcome back to The Art of Fatherhood. I'm Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
And today we are going to talk about consequences for your children. And in it, we're gonna build it all around a book by former Navy SEAL Eric Davis called Raising Men, which I'm just about finished reading right now. And I've loved. And as the author of a book on fatherhood, this is one that kind of really resonates with me. This was exactly, if I said to you, you haven't read this book yet, you're going to get it once I'm done. If I said to you, what do you think a book by a Navy SEAL about fatherhood would be like, what would you say?
Probably very highly structured.
Check.
Yeah. It'd probably be about discipline somehow.
Check.
And it would probably be about... Is there like training stuff in there too? Like working hard?
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Working hard, being able to deal with like difficult circumstances and how that prepares you for.
Yep.
Those would be kind of the highlights I would
Maybe
think.
He talks about one time where he threw his kid's PlayStation in the pool. Maybe that's in there.
Oh my God. Do you ever do, I'm terrible at this. Something I would like to get better at.
Yeah.
Empty threats.
Do I do empty? So here's what I've done.
Right.
Yes. But as feel like I've gotten better at fatherhood, the minute I walk away and I realize, fuck, I'm not going to follow through on that, I call them right back. Right. Be like, hey, that was my emotion. I know I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to put some thought to this. I'm going to get back with you because I know, right? Like,
well, let me ask this question.
Yes.
So I assume your Navy SEAL guy here who wrote this book probably didn't think that throwing the PlayStation in the pool was the best solution. Or did he think?
I don't think he had any problem with it at all. And
I'm always just like, I'm going to freaking take your phone and throw it in the river. I'm taking the freaking PlayStation 5 and throwing it in the river. You know, I have threatened to put it away into my top of my closet where he can't get it. He would have to make a significant edit. He'd have to get into my room. He'd have to get a ladder.
Yeah.
He'd have to get up there and get it. You know, so that would be an effort to get it.
Right.
So, but I have done that. But a lot of my other threats are just, I'm not really going to do it.
What I liked about what Eric did in this book is because it's what I try to do a lot. It's try to put some construct around something as subjective as fatherhood, parenting, and consequences. And I think he did this really well. And we'll talk about him. So in his book, Raising Men, Eric has 4 categories that he tries to check whenever creating a consequence for his children that we recommend you use, and I'm going to recommend you use as a guide to create consequences with your children. So one of them is safe. So the consequence needs to be safe, right? So it needs to be
It can't be, I'm going to kick your ass.
Needs to be under the structure of... Now, that doesn't mean it can't be a little challenging.
Right.
Or a little painful at times, or a little uncomfortable, but safe. No one's going to die from this or, be traumatized for life by it, right? The other one, it has to be something that helps to instill confidence, which is really interesting. I thought that one was really unique. So consequences are designed to instill children's confidence, okay? So in essence, can they come out, the way I process that is, can they come out of the consequence successful? Like in having either, fixed the situation or grown from the situation. The other one is relationship. It has to have a focus on relationship. So the consequence has to be something that builds the relationship between you and your child and doesn't break the relationship. And I think that one is very tricky. Sometimes I think we feel like this consequence is creating, how do we take a tough consequence and ensure that it builds the relationship between us and our kids and doesn't break it, right? That's a really good one. And the last one is effective. So the consequence has to be something that's designed to change their future behavior, right? So if we just have consequences in there and they don't do anything to alter the future behavior, then what's the benefit of them, right? Or at least make an effort to alter it.
Can I walk you through one?
Love it.
All right, let's walk through the easy one. I think for most of us who've got kids in a certain age range, I'm going to say 8 through like 12. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm going to say the consequence is taking some sort of technology away.
All right. So
right?
let's.
So can I walk through it quick?
Oh, you're going to go through
and
the whole
you're
thing.
You're going to tell me what you think about
Go.
it. Right. So the first one is safe. Right. So if they lose their technology, they're not going to get physically harmed. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think you're wrong.
Right. What was the second one? Relationship?
Confidence.
Oh, confidence.
So it has to be something that.
So if I take technology away, if I take my phone away from my kid because he's screwed up, right? Like, you're not going to get your phone for a bit. Does that improve his confidence? Not sure how I feel about that one yet. Let's walk back to it. 3 is relationship.
Yep.
So relationship is complicated, I think. And here's the 2 ways I look at that for removing the phone. Number one is it definitely makes us deal with each other more often, right? Because we have to do stuff while he's lost it. Like we've gone through this where we've played more card games. We've done more things together because he hasn't had the phone to distract him. But one of the things that taking the phone away does is it does make his relationships with his friends more difficult. Because right now, the way that they're maintaining that relationship, especially they're not in school right now, or if he's got friends who aren't at his school, then that relationship is broken. Because there's no other way to interact with those other people. And what was the 4th one again? Effective.
Changes future behavior.
So I always find that the problem with taking the phone away is that the short-term effectiveness presents itself, but the long-term ends up reversion. So I would say that taking the phone away as a consequence is probably maybe not 100% great then for that, or are there ways that we can improve it? So that's just kind of the way, as I was thinking it through, I was like, this is a common thing that I have done with all of my kids, right? My son and then my stepkids. We've all gone through a period where they have lost their phone. And the consequences are, again, is there mental harm? I'm not sure, because like they have become addicted to it. So like, I think there is some mental challenge to that. I think it is challenging, right? Because they have to break that addiction, right? That behavioral addiction that they have to it. That's hard to get over. But once they get over, the general feeling I know that we've had in the family is when one of the kids loses their phones is that they become a better person for that period of time, right? It's like all of a sudden like, oh, they're better person, you know, but the long-term ramifications aren't always long-term. They're usually short-term because there's usually a reversion to behavior. Now it might be like, could the long-term consequence be that now that they've been through that, the threatening of losing the phone becomes an effective deterrent because they went through that and they hated it. Like, oh, I don't want to have that happen again. So I'm not going to do that again. So that could be a good long-term effect. But if that, I mean, maybe you can just comment on that and just let me know how that fits into maybe what would be the next step would be to make those all better, or would it be to have a different consequence than losing the phone?
All right. So here's my take on after listening to you and hearing what you said. And if I say it wrong, just correct me. So from the safe standpoint, I agree that there's no physical harm in taking the concept of taking away the phone. I've heard parents argue about the mental harm of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I fully agree with it because it feels a little soft to me, like we're being a little soft. And, well, if they can't talk with their friends, they're just going to be more depressed. Well, okay. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But so I think safety can be looked at a couple different things: physical safety and mental safety, right? So you kind of evaluate that. The other thing about the safety part of it is, how do we take the phone away? Take the phone away in quotes is, all right, give me your phone, I'm going to lock it up. Fairly an innocuous act. Take the phone, smash it on the floor, a little bit of a violent act.
Throw it in the pool.
Right? So now, did we go to did we do that? Is that thing for shock? Does it create unpredictability in our parents understanding our behavior patterns. I think kids like predictability. It did feel that way when I read the book and he was like, I threw in the pool. I'm like, all right, I get it. I think the act of you throwing in the pool is a shock value. And in the book, he actually has the kid go in the pool and get it. It's like the middle of the winter, I think. So it's the pool's cold. He has the pool, and the kid goes and gets the skimmer. He's like, no, go get it. He has him like, go get it, get in the pool and get it. So I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with that.
No, I'm just
there's levels of. I think there's levels of it there. Now, was the kid unsafe going in the pool again? No, it created more discomfort, more of a shock learning value, which there can be value to. We can't discount the fact that. But this is the balance, and we can get to this when we get to relationship. So if we do things that create a high shock value, and shock is usually because the kid is now in a position where your behavior was not expected, and unpredictability creates anxiety sometimes. Levels of anxiety can be good. So we could spend 3 hours talking about the levels of anxiety we create in our kids when we're unhappy with them to decrease the behavior so it becomes memorable. Because if there's no if there isn't, you can definitely say that if there's no change in anxiety, it might not do the last thing, which is be effective, right? So sometimes there needs to be a little bit of, and that's a scale of where are we at right now, right? Like if you push the limit where I need to shock your system a little bit. And I think there's a reality. So as long as the act isn't going to really damage anyone, then we talk about the safe piece. So to your point about confidence, when I think about the thing with the...
I think I skirted that one.
Well, when I think about the thing with the phone and I think about this, it really comes down... I look at the confidence piece of a consequence as giving them the pathway to get back on top and better is the confidence builder. Like, okay, here's where we're at. Let's take the PlayStation. Let's stick with your example. Let's take the phone, okay? Here's where we're at. Here's the expectation for you to get that phone back. And I believe in you and I know you can do it. Go do it. And then they do, and it comes back to them, and that's the confidence piece. I think the confidence piece is the rebuilding, which is also the relationship. And I think where the relationship, so that the consequence doesn't become a thing that tears apart and brings together, to me, that's an exercise in communication. Because there is a difference between someone who just parenting and just saying, give me that. When you get back? I don't know. Get out of it. Like that. And you're going to give me that. Here's why. Right. And I don't even know when you're going to get back right now because I'm really upset. Like a process of communication. And then, okay, now I'm calm. Now I've thought through it. I know what I'm going to do. We're going to sit down. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to listen to you, right? And I'm going to hear your feedback too. Sometimes maybe I'll even change the consequence a little bit if what you say makes sense and maybe involve you a bit in the process, right? All right, makes sense, blah, blah, whatever. But to me, the relationship piece it's all about communication at that point and using it as a teaching opportunity. And also being willing to show your own mistakes, flaws, and humility. And the way I do that as a parent, and like I said, I've come along in this to be better at now, when I do that reactive punishment, which I've done, right? Where I say, give it, blah, blah. And then I kind of come down a little bit and I go to, and I'm like, fuck, that doesn't even make sense. Like, to your point with the phone, we go to the phone too quickly, I think, because it's the low-hanging fruit. But it may have nothing, it might not be tied at all to the thing we want to change. Right. So I try to make the consequence behavior. And then lastly, to make it be effective, I think it's got to tie a little bit to what the real thing was. So if you misuse your phone, the phone should go away. If you talk back to me, or you yell at me, you swear at me, my initial thing is, give me your phone. because I don't know what to directly tie to that at the moment, right? Like, I'm not sure what it is that I want to tie to that. So I go with the low-hanging fruit that I know is going to have the value, right? But I think the effectiveness of it is, as much as possible, I like to try to tie the consequence to the thing. The thing that we want to change, right? And if we want to change how our child reacts when they're upset, or the things that come out of their mouth when they're upset, well, maybe we need to put a little thought about what would do that. What would help with that? Because that's got nothing to do with it. You didn't tell me to fuck off because your phone. You told me to fuck off because you didn't like what I was saying and you were angry and you let your emotions come to your mouth. So what's a better way of kind of a consequence that works through that? I don't know. I don't know what that is. And maybe it's hey, I want you to call your grandmother right now. I want you to tell her to fuck off and hang up the phone. And then they'd be like, I'm not doing that. Right? That's what you're doing. Right? And so now I'm creating this.
But will that become a threat versus something you follow through on?
No, obviously I've just made that one up. But what I'm saying is, what you clearly have to, once I decide.
What is the purpose of this besides? So is this a way for you to evaluate what consequences you introduce?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a pre and a post review. What consequence am I going to introduce? How does it relate to one of these?
And it's a way to evaluate, what are we trying to do here?
Right.
Because I think too frequently as parents, you give the best example.
Because the phone's the easy one. I think it was probably everybody
phone
in this.
and car.
Yeah.
You're 16 years old.
Yeah.
Give me your car. Yeah. Fucking has nothing. Oh, you're not doing your homework. You don't have your car.
Well, what
the fuck does that have to do with?
These are big parts of their identity.
Yeah.
Right? The phone is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It's how they connect to their friends.
Yeah.
It's how they entertain themselves.
Yeah.
And it's how they pass the time when they're bored. Right? So these are the three things. And the car is their freaking freedom. Right?
Right.
So it's these things are going to introduce pain.
Yep.
And stress.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I'm not saying they're always wrong. I'm just saying sometimes it's just the easy low hanging fruit. And is it teaching? The
only way would be if you went through this stuff, right? Is that what you're saying basically? If we can use this as a way, the consequence. So the phone, taking the phone away, does it make whatever the sin was? Do they now not do that or do it less frequently? Are they more likely to choose a better path in the decision? Then it was probably effective. Then that would be the definition of effective.
I've taken my kids' phone away before and I've watched them and I'm like, I don't think they're that impacted by this right now.
Right.
I'm looking at it and I'm like,
well, it's like anything too. It's like the if you take the phone away too often, then the fourth time,
right,
it's not as big of a deal.
Right.
Because they get through it the first time.
Right.
The first time is all the pain. The second time is a little bit of pain. And the fourth time is all right, I've dealt with this. I can feel it. And that might not be bad. Because it's now that they can deal with it, then you've kind of, maybe you haven't solved the initial problem, but at least you've solved another problem, which is the addictiveness to the phone. But
I think these components are all equally as important. Safety is obviously the big one, but to me, it's
it takes away the corporal.
I love the focus on confidence. All right, now that we're here, how am I going to use this as an opportunity to provide them with a pathway forward? Because sometimes we're still really angry.
Right.
So we're not even we're not thinking that. We're still thinking we want a hammer. Right. But really, if we can get to the point where we can calm down and provide guidance and a pathway forward, and then the relationship part is to let them see that we're here to help them get there. I'm not here to I feel like I dealt with this with my son with some school stuff over the last couple of years, where it was he just wasn't turning in work. And after a while, there was a consequence. It was a safe one, obviously, but there was a consequence. And then the reality was what we, after this continued, I'm all right, we need to provide him with, and my constant communication with him was, listen, pal, as your dad, I can't just let you not do that. This is your job. Your job is school right now. So you have to understand that I won't accept you not turning in your work because that's your job. I don't care if you like school or not. You're never going to have a job where you love everything. You're going to have stuff you got to do. The homework's part of it. You got to turn in. So let's start that baseline. I'm here to help you make that happen. I know you look at me like, so how can we get there? And I make him be part of the solution and then say, all right, if we can get here, then this consequence will go away. Right. And what's the consequence? Right. And maybe with him, the consequence was when you come home, you need to sit downstairs with me and show me your work. I don't want to. It was tied to the thing. I didn't take away a phone. I don't want to treat you like a kid. This is what I don't like. You're getting older. Where I want to get to is you show that they are consistently turning this in, and I give you the freedom to go do it on your own because so you're gonna earn the ability back to show me that, all right, I don't need you over my shoulder to get this done. Right, I can do it. But if you do want me there to help, I'm here. It wouldn't be bad if you said, hey, Dad, help me provide. I give them the tools to kind of get there. But there's certain things that I think it's important that we have in front of us until they become rote. And I think these 4 are really good ones. Like when I wrote these down after I read the book, and I wrote them down so I would put them somewhere else too, where they're in front of me. I wanted to get them on paper. As he was saying them in the book, I'm like, I want to get that in front of me, and I want to get that in front of my kids. Like, and even though my kids are getting older, it's just a good skill set to think like whenever I am frustrated with them, especially the older ones, like the consequence kind of goes away a little bit, but maybe not. Because maybe with the older ones, the consequence is, hey, you know how I was helping you with that bill? Well, right now, you're not doing your part to kind of get me off that note, or do right, or you're kind of taking the slow road to make you kind of feeling a little taken advantage of. So these things, even with older kids now, there's still stuff there where all this could still really apply. And I think my recommendation to our listeners is, these are good. If you don't have guidelines that you are using to be consistent with how you're setting consequences with your kids, safe, confident, relationship, and effective are a great way to start. The book's Raising Men by Eric Davis. And I mean, I love him. I mean, what's your general thought? We just.
I'm feeling guilty. That's usually what happens during these conversations. It's like, oh shit, like I'm freaking not good at this. I think that the problem is probably the consequences too often taking the phone away because it's not really well thought through. But I do think,
we've all done that. That's what I'm saying. I've done it too.
I do think that the rest of it is, I don't always do a poor job at. And I was thinking through a couple of examples. One of them is the bad language. So like using F-bombs and stuff like that. Like one thing that I picked up, and this is just because of like, depending on when you met me and how you met me, and even in this environment, I'm either the guy who throws around too many F-bombs at the wrong time, or you've never heard me swear in your life. I'm one of those two, right? And it really is because I was working with kids for so long that like I developed this ability to just not use that language in front of people. Mm-hmm. So even when I was married, and I don't think, nothing against Max was perfectly fine in this realm, but she used bad language in front of the child in haste more than I did, and not in like over the top, just kind of like they dropped more often with her than they did with me.
Yep.
I've always been able to handle that, but that was only through the consequence of what I did for a living. Mm-hmm. I think, and just being around parents of children and being around children, you don't feel like you have that ability to do that. And so like when he goes nuts, he starts throwing around that stuff. One of the reasons why I like to pull the phone is because I know he's not going outside very often. We live in kind of an isolated area, so it's like we have kids around all over the place. So if he does hang out with kids, we obviously try and make that happen. But like a lot of times he's learning that from the phone. Yeah. Like, what's the source of this language? How did you learn this?
Right.
You learned this from the phone.
Yeah.
And do you hear and so we'll have this conversation. Like, do you hear me talking like that? You know me talking like that. And here's what I tell him. And I'm like, look, like, if you're like hanging around with like other kids, like around their families, and you're using this language and talking that way, you might not get invited back. You know, like they might not want to have you around. You know what I mean? Like, and so if you, exactly. So I do think that I'm just thinking it through as we're talking. Like, I do think I do that.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of walking through this to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And my ultimate goal is to say, like, can we have less of this language just thrown around? Like, don't just haphazardly throw this around. Like, it should be thought out in terms of your language. And then the other consequence, the other thing I was thinking about was just like junk food. Because like sometimes if I have too much junk food in the house, and he's just constantly going to get it. He freaking housed a whole box of cookies the other day, you know. And it's like, all right, what's the consequence? Maybe just remove that stuff, keep it away. Can you deal with it without it, and then reintroduce it back slowly, and be like, understand, like, look, like you have to make good choices for your future,
right? So
you feel good about what you're doing, so you have more energy, and you don't feel sluggish, like all those different things. So I think I do kind of do this, but I definitely feel like I need to be more intentional and think things through a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think that the part of it even resonates with me more is resonating with the last point, and then go through everything in terms of how I dealt with it and did I accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And if not, what can I do better next time?
Right. You know, and to wrap on this, I think my recommendation for our listeners would be pretty straightforward. It's create yourself a little worksheet, right? Like a little worksheet with these 4 things. Read the book, first of all. Highly recommend the book. We'll put the book in the description. There's some great Navy SEAL stories in there too, which makes it a cool kind of book. But use these 4 platforms and create yourself a little worksheet. The issues we deal with as parents are usually the same, and they repeat themselves. Like, my kid is always doing this, I need to fix it. So, you know, a lot of times once we create the construct, then it just repeats. But it's okay as a parent to be like, stop right now. Get whatever you do. Give me that phone. Whatever you do to just stop the behavior, and say, we're going to talk about that in a minute if you need to think through it. And then take 10, 15 minutes. Get your worksheet. Fill it out. Like, all right, what am I going to do here? And then call them back in. The beauty about parenting is, unless we're pulling them from a train that's about to hit them, we can take the time we need to be thoughtful about. The reason we don't is because we let our emotions come in. We say something, and then we don't want to go back on it. And I am become very okay with going back on what I said and bringing them back in and saying, you know how I said that? I'm not doing that. I was emotional. I was upset. And that doesn't make sense. But I am doing something, and here's what we're doing. So
I feel like that's really important too, because like
and it
like
humanizes you.
One of the reasons why we wouldn't go through this would be because why does the bad behavior affect you at the time it affects you? It's not usually. A lot of times it's because you're busy. I'm in the middle of something. So something that he does wrong that might not have caused you any thought is causing you thought now because you're busy in the middle of something.
Yeah.
So now you don't have time to think through this. Now it's like the
you're
worst,
just reacting
the worst
and stopping
time.
the behavior.
You react, but like I think that like that's still the right thing to do. But as you said, give yourself time, go through it all, process it. And I think the best part is, as you would say, rinse, wash, repeat, and review.
Yeah.
Go back over it when you think to yourself, especially if the behavior is over and over and over again, right? If it's like, I've done this over and over and over again, I'm not making any headway, go through and evaluate.
Love it. All right. Consequences with your kids. Use the steps we just outlined. Get the book Raising Men by Eric Davis. I'm Brian Fauci.
Patrick Marino.
Till next time.
Thank you.